Hello everyone, that Manga Kid here to give my full series review of 20th Century Boys by Naoki Urasawa. Now this also includes the other volume, 21st Century Boys, kind of the epilogue, end of the story sort of thing. So this, as you can probably tell, these are the perfect editions released by Viz recently. The single editions, as far as I understand, are out of print. But those have pretty cool spines. They have pretty cool covers. I know some people prefer those over these, but and I know at first I was not really liking the spines on these. I didn't think that they looked, like when you only have a couple of them, I didn't really think they looked good. But when you have them all side by side with the really vibrant text colors and everything, like it really looks quite nice all together. So if you're concerned about that at the beginning, it does actually look pretty good on your shelf once you have the collection of them. And then the covers themselves, obviously, they're pretty stunning. Very different vibe and aesthetic than the original single editions, but I think these look great. And the quality of the Viz signatures, I mean, they all have the French flaps and you know, the bit nicer paper quality, and they're nicely built books. So and they're 2-in-1s, so you don't have as many to collect, and these are currently still in print as far as I know. So probably a better option if you're looking to get into this series. But anyway, I'm not going to go too deep into what this is about, because as with most Naoki Urasawa titles, you want to read and experience it for yourself, because there's a lot of intertwining characters, stories, timelines, all this stuff. And this one is no exception. This is a really incredible series. In terms of Naoki Urasawa works, I have read Monster, I own that one. And I also own all of Master Keaton, which I really enjoyed. And I currently have read the first couple volumes of Asadora, which I've also enjoyed. So I'm willing to say that I am a decent fan of Urasawa's works. And this was one that had always intrigued me, but I was like, not really super duper interested at the moment when only the singles were out. And then when they announced this, re-release of in these perfect editions, I went, you know what, now's the time to get it. I'll buy it as it comes out. So I've been buying these. I think I bought the first 2, and then ever since then I was kind of pre-ordering or trying to get them as they were coming out. The last volume took forever for me to get my hands on because it kept going out of stock, but once I had it, I was able to finish the series. So that's the thing as well. Keep in mind, I was reading this volume to volume. Now, thankfully, I had 2 volumes worth of content each time it was a new volume released, but I wasn't reading this in one sort of go where I was getting a really fuller picture of what was happening. So I was a bit confused, but I'm willing to attribute a lot of that confusion to the fact that I had a few months in between each next installment I was reading, and with Naoki Urasawa titles, you really don't want to do that per se, because there's so much going on. There's in this story in particular, a lot of jumping of timelines, a lot of jumping to different characters and all that kind of stuff, that it can get very confusing if you don't just like chunk out a month or so to actually just sit down and read it, rather than over the span of I guess a couple years at that point of releasing. But anyway, our main character is Kenji. This story starts off with you're kind of seeing the destruction, this like apocalyptic event, and you're wondering, how did we get to this point? And so the story backtracks all the way to when Kenji and his friends were children, and we see that they, as kids, very imaginative, very outgoing, and they're really, they have a lot of fun, and they've made up this kind of like secret squad, and they've made up this story about this big monster thing attacking and how they're going to save the world. And and so as we're watching the flashbacks to their childhood, we're simultaneously seeing the present time while they're adults, and how mysteriously, a lot of the things that are happening in the world are things that they had predicted as children. And they had put this in the book of prophecy that they had written as children. And a lot of this stuff is coming true now. And so they're very suspicious as to who is behind all of this, because it has to be somebody who they knew as children. Because it's just too much of a coincidence that everything is lining up exactly as they had predicted it, as in their fantasies when they were young. And so this whole series is about, you know, a child's imagination, about friendship, about kind of bullying and ostracization, and how, you know, the actions and how we treat people throughout our entire lives can impact our futures. And so we watch them try and unravel as adults who is behind what's happening, why they're doing what they're doing, and how their past actions have impacted what's going on in the world now, and how they are partially responsible for the devastation that is happening in the present time. And so it's very intricate and intriguing, and something that you just like, you know, as with most Naoki Urasawa stuff, it's very heavy, like dense kind of conversations, dense you need to pay attention to understand what's going on. And but it's a lot of fun, and if you're willing to be along for the ride, you're going to enjoy yourself. And so this one's got a sci-fi fun, like, kind of twist to it that, like, Monster didn't have that aspect. So, yeah, this one's kind of cool. It's because you're dealing with this kind of monumental event. You're dealing with, like, a cult, basically, and this very different society than what we see, you know, in reality. All channeling back to this group of kids and their own imaginations. And it's so fascinating. And then because they're adults, we have Kanna is another one of the main characters. She is Kenji's niece. And so in the present day, we see her and how she's reacting to everything and how she feels about what's going on. And she's trying as well to unravel these mysteries because she knows that her uncle is involved somehow, but she just doesn't have all the pieces. Yeah. It's a really cool story. And these are really cool, vibrant releases that are just like, I love the colors, I love the popping of the artwork. I mean, if you've seen Naoki Urasawa's stuff before, then you know what you're getting into in terms of artwork. So it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's good, and it is what it is. And you know, if you've read another Urasawa work, you know what you're getting into. You're getting into a very long, drawn out, intricate, very plot heavy story. But you also know you're going to be entertained. So I do really recommend 20th Century Boys if you're at all interested in Urasawa's works. I mean, I would say Monster might be a bit more of an accessible work in terms of, like, I think Monster is a universal kind of story that anybody, even people who don't normally read manga, would enjoy. Just generally, this one is a bit more intricate in a way that I wouldn't necessarily recommend this one in particular to a non-manga reader or a first, you know, someone just dipping their toes in. I think Monster is a bit more accessible, but to me, as somebody who's read so much manga and everything, this one is more enjoyable to me, I think, than Monster. And I do look forward to the day when I decide to tackle this series again and actually have the opportunity to read it all in one go rather than waiting for the releases to come out. But I will say Naoki Urasawa works to me are not ones that you reread immediately, or at least I don't. I've only ever read Monster once. I've had it now for years, and I have never gone back to it. Not to say I won't in the future, but they're just very dense works that, you know, it's a commitment to decide to reread them. But I do definitely enjoy my time with them. Master Keaton is a whole other ball game. I really loved Master Keaton, but for very different reasons than why I like this series or why I like Monster. Yeah, if you have any suggestions of other titles that I should read that are non-Urasawa titles that have a similar vibe to this, I'd be interested. Anything else that's been released by Urasawa in English, I already have my eyes on and know whether or not I'm interested in picking them up anytime soon. But if you've read a series that is decently similar to 20th Century Boys in kind of theme or tone, I'd be really interested to know, because I had a good time with this one. It was a very interesting story. Yeah. Without spoiling too much for folks who haven't read it, I would like to hear in the comments how you've enjoyed this series if you've read it, or if you tried it out and it wasn't your thing. I'd like to hear that as well. But yeah, thanks for watching.